Built the plant in 53, Pike and Portsmouth DOE. U-235 in the groundwater chain, heavy metals drift with rain. They cracked the pipes, they dropped the shell, still denied what tests could tell. Open air, no tent in place, children sick, no public trace. Atomic corruption, filed it safe, never discussed. Paper trail burned to dust, you won't find what you won't trust. Atomic corruption, carried down the river bend, across the state, you can't pretend this don't poison in the end. Kids with cancer, no cause named, dust in schools they never claimed. No swab, no test, no agency, just buried deep bureaucracy. They said too costly to contain, but built a dud dump across the drain. Green up CO2, same report filed, the fish are gone, blame climate change. Atomic corruption, stamped and sealed, they walked away. Still the isotopes don't stray, bound to air, not bound to say. Atomic corruption, they marked 5 counties in the plan, laughed at Kentucky's open land, told us hillbillies won't understand. Technetium track 14 miles, same as plant, same toxic file. Lawrence Livermore drew the lines, but DOE said never mind. Births malformed, no press release, no study done, no state police. The river holds what they won't name. Atomic corruption, open air across the fields. Science told them never yield, but profit hides what power shields. Atomic corruption.
Hello.
It don't fade, it won't forgive. Still inside the lives we live. This is not a claim. Atomic corruption it is.
I'm Dana. Welcome back, everybody. That's the wrong one. Hang on here. You can call into these live shows, 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. Where are we to? What are we doing? How did we get here? What a stupid industry. You gotta start doing the do, re, mi, fa, sol, la before I go live, just to clear my throat or something. All right, I think we're ready to go. Looks good. Almost. It always takes a few minutes. Last night, the video which is unusual, we were covering a video last night, and the audio was a little bit higher than my voice. So normally what I do is I'll take the audio, I'll do a recording, I'll record that, and then I'll jump in, and then I'll adjust the volume, right? I didn't do it yesterday. Sue me. Don't sue me. Take that one back. Alrighty, we're going to talk about the first headline today. This was the first headline of today. Hong Kong maintains a ban on seafood from 10 areas in Japan. No, it's not 10 areas, 10 prefectures. A prefecture is significant, right? Because it's a massive area. It's not just like a little area, it's a massive one. China lifted this this makes sense as I go through it, but originally starting off, of course, nothing makes sense when it comes to nuclear. That's the problem with nuclear, is nothing makes sense. The industry has sold so many lies for so long. So China says nothing got added there till 2023, August the 24th, according to that story we're reading. According to the story we're reading, nothing got out of these buildings. This is 2012, 2013 pictures. And according to Japan and China and every university on the planet and every media on the planet, nothing got out of these buildings. This is 2 of the 4 reactor buildings. Does that make sense? When it comes to nuclear, does anything make any sense at all? China lifted part of its ban, but the city's restrictions, Japanese seafood imports remain. And because of environmental and health concerns. No, because it's a nuclear wasteland. There's some connotations in the show tonight where like, what? We're stepping into the twilight zone. So there are still fish, right? There's still birds, there's still whales. The whales are all emaciated. And the predatory whales, despite the fact there's fish, are emaciated. How does that work? Go from 12 inches of blubber to nothing, to rib cages protruding from their bodies. The whales, the giant whales, the biggest animals on Earth, the most magnificent creature. It's better that 1,000 nuclear scientists died than a single whale. The ban was on seafood. Like, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags because the country's a nuclear wasteland. And as we get through the show tonight, that becomes pretty obvious. The United Nations is out there saying that they started their second dumping of the water. The ban was first put in place when Japan began releasing water from the out of use. I've never heard a nuclear meltdown described as an out of use. This was a Hong Kong media, I believe. Yeah, Hong Kong. This was SCMP. This is a major media. This is Chinese media. Radioactive fallout covered the whole planet, but nothing got out. So there's no need to ban the food until 2023, August the 24th. But this is the French government, the actual governments of France, the IRSN itself. Radioactive fallout just acknowledged in cesium-137, 23 days of radioactive fallout covers the whole planet. This picture is March the 15th, 1, 2, 3, 4 reactors. And at the top of each of the buildings were decades of reactor cores. So we're looking at around 36 reactor cores were lost, and each reactor core was equal to about 100 Chernobyls. Chernobyl was a graphite reactor, was a new reactor, was a small reactor. These are big reactors. These are pure uranium plutonium. Reactor 3, also known as Medusa, was a plutonium X-oxide reactor. It was used in reclaiming uranium plutonium from nuclear fuel, which is an abomination process that poisons trillions of insects and species worldwide from the emissions. Don't worry, it'll make sense by the end of the show if you're not familiar. How many people think the people behind me, and these are big media, is right directly behind me is ABC, as Cecilia Vega. She's currently in the press club at the White House. CNN, Anna Curran, BBC, Rupert Winfield Hayes, and CBS, Seth Dorn, PBS, is a senator's son, by the way. All claim, this is just some of the media claiming they're on top of the building to the left, which, and The depiction of where they're two means they have to be about 140 feet above the stump you're looking at to your left of reactor 4. Does it make sense? So they built this contraption off-site. They brought it in. This, you can see the remains of the building stays right there. And look to your left at the ground all the way up. There's really nothing left of the building, right? This is important just for the foundation for the rest of the show. This is considered out of use. Now, there's no longer a meltdown. There's no longer even nuclear. Now it's out of use. It's so anybody who's and they don't show you any pictures, right? If I don't show you the picture, then you have no context whatsoever. So clearly, I'm a evil person because I'm showing you pictures of the reactors. That's pretty evil. Then you can't go showing pictures of the reactors. The population might wake up and realize there's more to this story. Bear with me. There's nothing easy about these stories. I guess if it was easy, everybody would be doing it, right? Reactor 3 and 4, can you tell the difference? Which one? I'm almost there. I got everything else ready for the rest of the show. I just didn't bring in, here we go. And the obvious. Because these shows are just insane. It's insane that we're telling this story again. So the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. The buildings are 190 feet, 65 meters, 19 stories. The stump to your left should have been raised all the way to the ground. There is nothing left. They left the stump there so they can put this contraption over it. And then the media, which have 70 identical reactors in the United States, are just pretending they're in Japan. And they're at the top of the building and everything is perfect. Have we ever, like if this was a science fiction book, it would be completely implausible that anybody could do that, right? That the media wouldn't be out, it's a lie, that the university, this is outrageous. Instead of the university's got a big sharp knife, and as soon as you open your mouth, they cut your throat. Hence the reason I'm planning on going to the universities now, because I'm censored so much on YouTube. So if I go to university and I get 20 people in my lecture, I'll have more people in my lecture than I do in my YouTube video. And this is going to come back and bite the nuclear industry because censoring me is what drove me into all the universities across the country for the rest of my life, see? It's a fitting, and I'll stream it on LiveTube at the same time. Who's going to win this battle, do you think? Hopefully humanity wins the battle. All right. But it's considered out of use. When you look at these buildings, are they out of use or destroyed? How disingenuous and dishonest and deceptive and deceitful and despicable to make the assertions that the buildings are... How is it that nobody on the planet is willing to come out and say Dana's right? Instead, everybody's demonized me, everybody attacks me. The nuclear industry, Operation Long Jump, has turned even my own province against me, let alone my country and everybody else. Through a campaign that's known as Operation Long Jump, the Japanese government have targeted me with an operation. And any smear they can find and stick to me, they're just throwing all their dirty underwear at the wall, and whatever sticks, right? And of course, this nuclear industry, they have a perpetual amount of dirty underwear and $5,000 suits. From the out-of-use Fukushima nuclear power plant, the out-of-use, do anybody really think that could work again? See, that journalist If I met them right now, I'd kick them right in the nuts. What else would you do, really, right? Because if you say something to them, they're just going to defecate and wipe it all over themselves so that you won't attack them. But Hong Kong will not change its own ban, which does not allow sea product from Tokyo, Fukushima, Chiba, Tochigi. And because you know how stupid I am, I actually went in there and outlined all of these places. So Taiwan still won't take food from all of these places. Now Niigata, which is on the Ishikawa prefecture, on the west side towards North Korea and Russia, is quite interesting, isn't it? Now the food is banned in 14 prefectures for agricultural. Because this depiction is for seafood. The industry is so evil, coming up with solutions. You can't come up with a solution because they're too busy being evil. They're too busy. The nuclear industry has always denied. And so now we've contaminated the entire planet forever and ever and ever and ever. Even if we were to contain all the 1,000 fuel pools on the planet, dig up all the nuclear waste, the splitting atoms we dumped, we closed down every nuclear power plant on the planet, we still now have destroyed humanity and, without exception, the 8 million species. We can't stop the evil that the industry has released into the environment, known as radioactive fallout. It's evil on a level that, unfortunately, humanity is refusing. So even Tokyo, the seafood and the food grown on land is banned. And it was by 55 countries for over a decade. And then the people that in those countries were replaced with the pro-nuclear degenerates. And then those restrictions were released. But there's 20 countries that still have a ban on agricultural and seafood in the 10 plus prefectures. And 10 plus prefectures is a lot of prefectures. But not enough. The whole country should be banned. Everything in that country should be banned. The country is a curse on humanity. Bear with me, I'm just trying to... Okay, we left off right here. I gotta copy that one. There we go. And I copy that one. I just want to copy and paste them into my old shit pile. There we go. So those 10 prefectures banned they said started in August 2023 because they're refusing to accept that nuclear waste has a longer half-life than 14 years. The plutonium radioactive fallout. And so you would imagine this is the best model to look at compared to neptunium. Neptunium is worse looking, right? But the neptunium decays to plutonium-239 in 2.5 days. So the model is based on 20 days to your left and 21 days behind me of radioactive fallout. So plutonium covers the entire planet. Begins discharging treated. You can't treat the water because, first off, the reactors lost all their inventories in the first week, not in 2023. And like you can't filter the contamination of the planet. Everything on the planet now is tritiated water, what's known as tritiated, because it's radioactive. Because radiation has covered the entire planet so many times now. If it was a snowstorm, you could never dig out your house, so to speak, right? It would be, if you can see it, then you would never leave your house again. In fact, you would have nowhere safe in your house to be. You can't treat it, because if you try to filter this stuff, gammas, neutrons, betas, and alphas all go into a filter. You have a meltdown in the filter, because you have a neutron source, right? And the betas and alphas and gammas. And then you get the X-rays going off because they're in proximity. So that's going to melt down. Not only that, you're talking about fuel particulates splitting atoms in the filter. Zero possibility it doesn't melt down. It can't be filtered, because that's how science works. But ask the average person how the nuclear science work, and they'll like, in August 2023, Japan began discharging treated wastewater. So all the media is making the assertion that nothing got out of the buildings, despite the fact that everything got out of the buildings in the first week. The model to your left is based on 26 days after the tsunami on the bottom, and 7 days at the top. The radioactive fallout is covering the coastline of Alaska, Canada, and the eastern seaboard. By the 25th of March, 2 weeks later, all of Canada, all the United States is buried. And by April 7, 2011, and it's all over, but they're crying. So the reactors really did melt down. The reactors really did blow up. The inventories were actually lost right away. So coming out and claiming, erroneously, criminally, that Japan never started discharging emissions until 2023, and that third quarter of 2023 on top of that, 12 years later, this is incredibly dishonest and deceptive and deceitful and disingenuous. But the whole planet was covered in 23 days, according to the French government and every other government, right? All the models I showed you, the neptunium, which decays the plutonium, all the models are 20 days, 20 days, 26 days, 23 days. And that's a fraction of the institutions we've snatched and aggregated the documentation. This is not a projection, this is documentation. This is at 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137 per cubic meter of air. Sustain the entire planet. So think of a snowstorm where after 23 days, the whole planet is covered in snow. The snow never stops coming out for millions of years. The snow never melts, but this snow pulses energy. Every snowflake will pulse energy almost at the speed of light for millions of years. That's called climate change, by the way. Gas, oil, and coal emissions don't pulse energy at the speed of light, nor do they make plumes that covers the whole planet, or anything close to it. Concerns rising at Fukushima plant. 16,000 workers / homeless and destitute and victims of society, and the immigrants who don't speak the language have quit. Severe working condition was blamed. Severe working conditions. Gee, I wonder what that could be. Because according to Hong Kong and the Chinese and everybody else, nothing got out of there until 2023 and late 2023. But according to the facts, it all got out in the first week. And so why do I only have 10 people viewing my video? Why do I only have 10 likes? Why do I only have 13 votes? Why isn't the world rallying around this? Why am I the only person that's providing the documentation for this stuff? Why am I still at this all these a decade and 4 years later, 14 years? We're still every day trying to tell this story because All the birds are emaciated, all the whales are emaciated. I'm going to provide you with an overwhelming amount of documentation for these assertions tonight. For all 10 of you, 11 of you. It's time to make a geezer suicide squad in 2012. That story came out. That was the original first couple of weeks. A geezer, which is a derogatory term for somebody that's retired, who worked all their lives and deserved to enjoy the rest of their lives with their grandchildren or just freedom from the slavery and the tax machine. We exhausted our options when discussing evacuation. You know why nuclear plants have sirens around it? To trick you into thinking they're going to use them if there's a meltdown. TEPCO confirmed the steam coming up from underground of reactor number 1. Reactor number 1 is now 4.7 Seabirds, which is more than a lethal dose for a human in a few minutes. And it's 20% more than it was in June, in October the 17th, 2011. So clearly parts of reactor 1 have gone China syndrome. The fuel pool itself, though, had detonated. And the documentations of that shows clearly we lost a significant amount of the inventories when that happened. And I believe this is the picture or the video of that. Yeah, I think this is reactor 3. Yeah, that's reactor 3. Sorry. Let me move them around because reactor 1 is supposed to be the first one, Dana. That's the plutonium mixed oxide. That's the reactor core and the fuel pool falling back down to Earth at that time. That plume is the fuel. This is reactor 1. And this was a vortex explosion. There it is. That's the fuel pools. There's nothing at the top of the buildings to make that kind of plume. Look how mobile the plume is right away. Right, that's real time. So that's a very high speed. Now, the rest of it is still melting down. The whole story is insane. In August 2023, Japan began discharging all of the inventories in the first week, for goodness sakes. So why is the media? Because that's the official story, and it's most likely concocted by United Nations. Certainly it's promoted by the International Atomic Energy Agency, ERPA, UNSCLEAR, the IPRC, which are all UN so-called nuclear watchdogs that are clearly not nuclear watchdogs. Hence the reason we have is United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency cover-up of Fukushima's nuclear meltdowns, criminal and crimes against humanity. If you think it is, raise your hand. Good job. A Hong Kong government spokesman said that the release of the contaminated water was unusual in both size and time frame. Did he see these pictures? Of course he did. It was all gone in the first week. And calling it waste is despicable. It's unconscionable. And suggesting that this can be filtered is laughable if you're looking at science. A government spokesperson, truly the worst human created, and calling it waste is dishonest. And it's just completely despicable to use that terminology. The so-called journalist who wrote the story, she spent the rest of her life in jail for perpetrating and hiding crimes. They're part of a criminal conspiracy. This is racketeering, what they're doing. But the decision, they can prosecute it on the racketeering laws for most countries for doing these false stories. But the decision to discharge water prompted China to ban all Japanese sea products. China's had a ban on 14 prefectures, including Tokyo, of agricultural food for 14 years. That's still in place. China still has a ban on 10 prefectures for seafood, and had, in 2023, they added another couple of prefectures. Now they removed those couple, but they still have a ban on the original 14-year water. Calling it water is completely dishonest. This material has nothing to do with water. If you got 2 liters by your child is dead in about 5 or 7 minutes. They don't drink it, they just got to be sitting there within 10, 20 feet. But the decision to discharge the lethal material prompted China to ban, and China is vehemently pro-nuclear, which means they're attempting to exterminate the entire species, and will most likely succeed in August 2023. So this is April the 4th, 2011, not August the 24th, 2023. At the same time, the Hong Kong government restricted imports from 10 Japanese regions. China said would resume importing seafood products from Japan, except for, why did they wait so far in the story to put this there? Except for the same 10 areas / prefectures / massive prefectures. Why not call it what it is, prefectures, 10 prefectures? Why call it areas? Except for the same 10 areas. Why not call it prefectures? Isn't that what it is? TEPCO begins the second round of the treated water releases at Fukushima. The Tokyo Electric Power Company, which is not a decommissioned authority, was hated by the entire country because they shouldn't have been left. Why wouldn't you put the people, like, if you know, the reason most people don't fix their own cars is because they're not mechanics, right? And TEPCO is not, don't build nuclear reactors. And so why would they be in charge of dealing with something so catastrophic as a nuclear meltdown? Not only a nuclear meltdown, but 4 reactor buildings that melted down, that had decades of reactor cores at the top of them, and they melted down and detonated and everything else. Why would you leave a company that has no experience whatsoever so that you can blame them instead of the nuclear industry? But also, you're going to have to sacrifice the entire species on the planet. Every bird, every whale we're seeing now is significantly, severely emaciated. How can we turn our backs on this? How can we pretend like what they're doing? They don't have the moral compass. The whole planet. They don't have a right to poison our planet. They don't have a right to poison all the water on the entire planet. They don't have a right to turn every whale into an emaciated freak show. And I don't understand why this planet is not standing tall alongside of me. I don't understand that. I can't reconcile that. How do you expect to have what do you think this world is going to look like in 10 years? There's going to be no whales, no birds in 10 years or less. There'll be maybe 100 gray whales in 3 years' time. All the gray whales were emaciated last year, and there was no babies survived the migratory trip, 12,000-mile trip south last year to Baja California. This year they only had 80 babies. There's only 13,000 left of the 27,000. post-Fukushima gray whales. Just 52% of them now have died, and all of them died of emaciation. All the whales currently are so emaciated. From the shorelines, you can see the rib cages, the peanut heads, the shoulder blades, the spinal column sticking out. Do you really think that some of the whales in that mass, and this is admitted, this is not my opinion or something, it never is, right? This is fact. It's admitted that they're all emaciated. The thousands and thousands of migrating whales, 13,000, are emaciated. So the media, when they show up emaciated and dead on the shoreline, will come out and say they might have died of ship strike, or they might have died of debris, whatever that means. Anything but the truth. And that is unconscionable. That is ultimately just going to turn every human against every journalist and every newspaper and every TV station, because that kind of lie is so big that eventually it's going to go viral. The world at some point will not stay asleep. They've lost control over the last decade, in particular now. So the reactor cores was reactor 3. The reactor cores and the fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. The decades of reactor cores is where they store in the fuel pool. These reactors were over 30 years old at the time. Some of them 40 years old. And so fuel every 14 months go in the pool, splitting atoms forever into the environment. Some 7,800 tons of tritium, not even tritium-3H, which is man-made, but tritium, containing treated water. It's such a dishonest, like none of the plumes of the radioactive fallout are of tritium. But everything that it touches becomes tritiated. It irradiates. So all the water is now tritiated, anthropogenic, man-made tritiated water on this planet. It is the 13th round of water discharges that began in August 2023. Or did it begin on March the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th? All these buildings and fuel pools blew up in that time frame in 2011, not 2023, not 12 years later. The little bird that I rescued a few days ago, he wasn't alive. I wanted to bring him to the veterinarian this morning, right? He didn't make it, unfortunately, which made me really sad. I can't be attached to him. He was only had him for a couple of days, right? I went to the vet on Saturday morning when I found him, but they weren't open, right? And they're not going to come in for a little starling. He was such a pretty little bird. Or she, I'm not sure. But anyway, it's too bad. That's the way it rolls. Because we don't see many birds anymore. Most of the birds we're seeing are seed eaters. Still some insect eaters, obviously, but not the fledglings from the seed eaters have failed several years in a row now. So this is what the buildings looked like in 2011, the first month. This is what they looked like 2012, 2013. Right? They left the little stumps there so they can put the contraptions over them and pretend they were in the buildings getting the fuel out. It's not. We can't allow it to continue. We can't allow them to destroy hope. Not just our future, but hope. That's what they're destroying. They're destroying hope. And the callousness and the heartlessness, the ruthlessness, the cowardness of these people are really spectacular. Like there is a lot of really stupid people, okay, in government jobs on top of that. They're stupid, greedy and evil on top of that. And if you ever had to deal with them, you realize that these are just degenerate humans that are incapable of doing the jobs. But a lot of people forget how evil a journalist actually is. So the media that wrote this story, it's impossible they didn't understand the information I'm showing you. So for them to write this story, so they write this couple of paragraphs, and they get a lot of money every week, every month, every year after year. All I got to do is write these laws, and their kids will go to private schools. Their kids will go to privileged colleges and universities. Their kids will have full health care, full dental, full medical. They'll be on all kinds of sports and academics. They'll live like royalty. They'll be on vacation every year. They'll be dressing in high tops and beautiful haircuts, and they'll be the privileged kids in the school, and they'll grow up to be monsters just like their degenerate, disgusting, parasitic parents were. That is not a tenable system, right? That's a system that has now jeopardized the future of humanity and the 8 million species. It's unconscionable to sit in silence. It's a significant flaw to sit in silence as a human. And the song I started off with, Atomic Corruption, I think is probably one of the best songs to help articulate this. Fear of marine life is being poisoned by nuclear material flowing from the Pacific, 2013. Not 2023, but 2013. Experts warn of festering radioactive sour contaminating the food chain. TEPCO flip-flop. TEPCO's not supposed to exist. They should have been... Like the purpose of a corporation, a company, was a business. It was just a business to employ people, and it was the cycle of life, so to speak, right? And they had a charter, and the charter was designed to protect the community and the environment. And so if they breached their charter, in other words, they polluted it or abused their employees or polluted the community, they could be jailed. There was an incentive not to be evil. So they could be jailed, and then their assets could be liquidated for restitution and outstanding debt and remediation. Instead, you gave them corporate personhood, an illegal amendment of the slavery law that gave corporations certain human rights. And now they can't be held accountable, and there's no incentive, because they can't go to jail, they can only get a fine, and they don't pay state, federal, local taxes. That goes in offshore accounts. So when they do get a fine, who cares? Because that money came from the taxes they were supposed to pay, but put in an offshore account and accrued it interest. So they're not accountable. And when you went from a charter to a corporate personhood, and there was a Supreme Court Justice Hugo Blackhead wrote an eloquent dissent in the 1930s of how absurd it was that an amendment meant to free slaves from an oppressive government was now being used by corporations to oppress a sovereign people, which is what we were back then. You know, originally, right, if you parked, say, by the beach on that side of the road, that was legal. There was nowhere they can stop you from parking, unless it was somebody's driveway or something. You can park anywhere. But a business couldn't park by the beach because they were interrupting your ability to go out and have a good day. And so if a business parked there, the police could give them a ticket, but they couldn't give you a ticket because you were a sovereign person. That's where the sovereign person actually comes from. That has been mongrelized by the disgusting parasitic media and weaponized in so-called terminology solvent people. And so corporate personhood has mongrelized our rights and freedoms and constitutions and Magna Cartas and Bill of Rights to the point now where they're ineffective in holding a corporation accountable. And so now the nuclear industry has piggybacked off of that and understood that they can't be held accountable and have now put their profits ahead of the typical responsibilities that was indelible to a charter. The Times, lethal threat from Fukushima highly radioactive waters flowing into the Pacific. This is the Times in 2013. A lethal threat from Fukushima highly radioactive water flowing into the Pacific. This is not 2023. This is 2013 radio. Fukushima Daiichi has contaminated the biggest body of water on the planet in 2013. And the radioactive emissions to harm marine and human life. The whole Pacific Ocean likely to have not only acknowledged in cesium, more likely not than 137, levels 5 to 10 times higher than at peak of the nuclear bombs test. So clearly radiation has gotten out long before, and the documentation was that there was descending voices in the first few years. Authorities on the U.S., they were removed or replaced, or they were brought on board. Authorities on the U.S. West Coast concerned with stunning news from Fukushima. Radioactive water is pouring out every day and headed our way, 2013. Radioactive water reached 3,200 kilometers east of Fukushima 6 months ago, September the 18th, 2013, not 2023. Now, the official story as of August 24, 2023 is nothing got out. And that was promoted by Rafael Grossi and his goblins from the UN. Operation Long Jump, yep. It's a long jump. Oh, let's play that, Operation Long Jump. This is where they threatened me. Let's play the video for just badness. Hang on, I gotta delete everything I've done so far. Because if I don't, I got real trouble. Can I find Operation Long Jump? That's the big question. Oh! So I'm a good bit of a potty mouth in this one. I still get a laugh out of it though for some reason. So anyway, this was a scumbag we call Calm Down Charlie. He's just a despicable, subhuman creature. And he calls into the show and harasses me during the live shows and denies that there's any adverse effects. But in this particular clip, he acknowledges that he works with the Japanese government, Tokyo Bureau, Chicago Division, and that they have acquired Stinkfoot, also known as Thunderfoot on YouTube, Phil Mason, a nuclear engineer, and that they launched an operation known as Operation Long Jump. And they wouldn't want to be me because they were going to smear me like nobody has ever been smeared before. And I didn't understand at this point, this is what they were talking about. It took a few months before I started to realize what they were doing to me. But ultimately, and they're still at it, everywhere I go, they're smearing me. Apparently, they're tracking me. And I know that might sound conspiratorial to the uninitiated, but it's the furthest thing. Here we go. Oh, yes. Now, see, because this camera, the aperture is stuck open. I can't do pictures. I can only do videos. And if I accidentally click a picture, and so just the background is, that's one of the islands I'm researching the species. They had a 4% survival rate of the fledglings. They weren't feeding from the ocean. They were feeding from a fish plant. And so we're talking about, so normally I'm out there by boat, right? And I think I might have come up with a solution for the issue I got on my boat right now. I'll bring that up later. Here we go. Let's watch this little short video of Japan launching Operation Long Jump against little old me. the government of Japan has an operation to destroy me. Take the lens off, restart the camera, click a picture, that'll leave it open. Turn the camera off, then put the lens back on and only use video, right? So when you're zoomed way in over to that island, because that's one of our study groups for field studies, and it's good enough, like ideally, the theory was I can shoot the video. I think that's Calm Down Charlie. Should we give it a try? Hello.
Hello, Mr. Dana.
Who's this?
Yoshida Machado, Tokyo Bureau. How are you?
Is this the Tokyo Bureau Chicago division?
Indeed, yes. Mr. Dana,
how do you like my
how do you about a new
how do you like my T-shirt I got for you? Do you like my
we want to tell
Do you like my
about
T-shirt?
a friend of Tokyo Bureau.
Do you like that?
Tell you about friend of Tokyo Bureau.
You fuck Tokyo Bureau. Fuck you too, you piece of shit.
Radiation
You shut your
nuclear.
pie hole.
He know a lot more than you.
Who do?
You're stupid, man. He a friend of Tokyo Bureau, and he is instrumental in helping us launch Operation Long Jump.
How do you spell that?
Operation Long Jump.
How do you spell
Mr.
it?
Dana.
How do you spell it? How do you spell it?
Huh?
How do you spell that? Long jab.
Huh?
Long
What do you
jab?
say?
You say long jab?
Long Jump.
Long jab.
No. Operation Long Jump. Get it right, Mr. Dana.
Long jab?
Long Jump.
Did you order one of my T-shirts I made for you? You probably got the pink. You probably got the pink one, right?
Stop avoiding the situation.
What do you want, scumbag?
With Tokyo Bureau advisor and friend,
Yeah.
Mr. Thunderfoot, you're gonna be finished. You're gonna be finished, Mr. Dana.
Yeah, I'm all shook up, eh? I'm so scared of you.
You should be. Oh, I would love to be in your shoes. Oh, you make me sick.
Hey, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Okay, sit tight, Mr. Dana.
What are you going to be when you grows up?
Sit tight. We'll be with you soon.
I heard.
See you later, Mr. Dana.
What are you going to be when you grow up? I heard you're going to be a big prick just like me. Which means you haven't got far to go, actually, do you? So there's an interesting threat. They're going to come out and challenge me, are they? That should be fun. But that's not what they were doing. They weren't going to come out and challenge me. They were going to make up vicious rumors and attack me in my community, in my province, in my country, and worldwide. Get your Calm Down Charlie T-shirts. We got other colors besides the pink. We got blue and green. And we got other shirts there. So you got a nuclear expert's going to challenge me. That's so much fun. I'm so impressed. Save the whales, ban nuclear power. Save the insects, ban nuclear power. Pro-nuclear is a hate crime. Charlie's a hate crime. That's the famous Calm Down Charlie, folks. You all just got him in real time. So that's an interesting threat. I wonder what, do you think, a lousy threat? The next call was James calling in, actually. That's Stinkfoot up right there, / Thunderfoot, Phil Mason. Back to the story. My ears were sore last night because I was wearing the headphones all night. Right, doing the show is unusual for me to wear headphones. A total of about 54,000 tons of treated water will be discharged in 7 rounds this fiscal year. 2025, right? That's the story from today. Government report, Fukushima ocean plume hit Canada 6 months ago, 2013. Precedes the model prediction by several years. Well, the plume hit right away, within 7-12 days. Certainly within 20 days, right, as I showed you earlier. And the damage was catastrophic to British Columbia, Alaska, California. Species to your left are exterminated. We've done 6 years of these research expeditions. Highest levels of Fukushima contamination plankton are already east of Hawaii. The highest levels of Fukushima contamination. So who eats the plankton? Which happens to be the basis of the food chain, the basis of the oxygen chain, because that's right, the Pacific makes 50% of the oxygen, and the basis of the carbon sequestering chain. Just the emaciated whales. And like Cassin auklets, dove kites, small birds that showed up by the millions emaciated. Fukushima radioactive plume will continue to hit the shores of the United States and Canada for decades. Impossible to remove the well, it's forever. The radiation, not just decades. They're at the time that the emissions are for decades. It's impossible to remove the molten cores for hundreds of years, if ever. And the flow of contamination from the plant will be virtually impossible to stop. Well, the problem was the reactors blew up, the plumes covered the entire planet in just a couple of weeks, and these were continuous plumes that covered the entire planet. Once it covers the whole planet, that's game over for all the keystone species. After we left Japan, this is a famous sailor who sails multi-million-dollar yachts and races around the planet and everything else for decades. Couldn't believe it. When they left Japan, it felt like the ocean was dead. Nothing alive for 3,000 miles. No longer saw turtles or dolphins or sharks or birds, just one whale with a big tumor on his head. Fukushima radiation is a possible culprit in the huge starfish die-off from Mexico to Alaska. That's the eastern seaboard, folks. San Francisco Chronicle. Potential catastrophe. It's extremely virulent, going up and down the coast. It's going to change what's out there pretty fundamentally. UC Santa Cruz professor, where it has hit, it has been pretty lethal. It's dying in huge numbers. We've seen them go from a lot to zero fast. The ones that get it first are all predators. It just started, so we don't know yet what it's going to do. The theory is there's going to be a fundamental shift in the balance of sea life. Usually it's pretty obvious what's causing it. None of those factors exist. I think it's the end. We see it more and more sites. So they don't know what it is in that context. Well, clearly, what else could it be but radioactive fallout, right? And this model is actually Stanford's model of radioactive fallout based on 19.5 days, folks. I think I was attributing this one recently to the Norwegian Institute for Air Research, which I think is the purple model. There shouldn't be a purple model of the radioactive fallout because the only thing that's purple when you burn it is potassium. Into the ocean, 47 quadrillion becquerels is only based on the amount from a single day. So the emissions into the ocean that the model, right, like this are based upon, is based on a single day. Or not that model, but water and nuclear fuel coming up off the ocean floor off the Fukushima coast. Tokyo professor, 156 quadrillion becquerels, atomic atoms. So you need an atom to make a BQ, to pulse that energy. The BQ is considered, or is known as a becquerel. The becquerel is an explosion from a physical atom, man-made atom. So cesium-137 will pulse energy 600 feet every second. The atom. Not once, but every second. For 300 years. Double Chernobyl in the basement of the buildings, that's their estimate. Getting close to the total fallout from every atomic bomb in history. And maybe outputting from the seeps in the seafloor, they don't know. But the reactors ejected the reactor cores right into the buildings. Unlike Chernobyl, they're right on the ocean. And then the tsunami debris, which was the size of Texas, 2,000 square miles, was buried in radioactive particulate fallout. And so as that drifted way out into the Pacific, the fuel particulates were falling. Fuel particulates are splitting atoms for millions of years. So that stuff was washed off. A lot of it was washed off the tsunami debris far out to sea. So it was particularly frightening for the future of all the species because of that particular attribute. All-time high radiation levels in the wells. So the wells are, they dug a bunch of wells all over the Fukushima site allegedly. And I say that because there's a lot of places where the bulldozers buried high radiation levels. The remote control bulldozers just buried it, and then it was paved over and cemented, and steel plates and paved over and cemented, and steel plates and paved over. You get the picture, right? Till the doses were low enough, the homeless weren't dropping dead everywhere at the surface. So when you drill down and you get into that stuff, right? Because what you're doing, you're drilling down, you're putting a pipe down, and then you're pumping any water up, and then you're testing that. That's the allegations. How are you going to do that on a site where you had 36 reactor cores detonate? Because you need academics to go in and do stuff like that. And the only people that we know that have been there are the homeless and the destitute, the victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language. Is United Nations, International Atomic Energy Agency's cover-up of Fukushima nuclear meltdown criminal and crimes against humanity? That's why I've only got 18 likes and 14 viewers and 17 votes because of that particular poll, right? There's a lot more people watching this. There's not that many heartless people on the planet that only 14 people are watching my show. I can assure you there's a lot of people watching this show. A lot of this show is reposted on different sites by other people right after. But the industry has complete control over YouTube. Not like a little bit, but complete control over my YouTube. Any dissenting voices. They have over 10,000 lobbyists that work at YouTube, and their job is to silence any dissenting voices against particularly the nuclear industry, who has 1,000 public relation firms. I mean, you got Thunderfoot, 1 million subscribers. He's not attacking me at his site, even though he has. He's because he's British, which is similar to the Canadians. And so he's being used to figure out how to attack me in my communities and the cities in my province, my country, right? How did he destroy me? And so he's actively had been providing documentation to make sure the Japanese government, Operation Long Jump, can destroy everything about me. And so they'll take a rumor and blow it out of proportion to make sure everybody on the planet. I had produced, I remember I had produced around 3,000 presentations on this stuff 5 years ago or something. And I come back to the province. My sister-in-law said she watched the clip of me where I called for harming lawyers, so to speak. She didn't even use that word. But the clip was about me calling for criminals to be held accountable. She didn't watch any of my 3,000 presentations, had no concept of Fukushima. She was only aware of a clip that made me look bad, and so therefore I must have been a bad person. And of course I call her the C word for having zero fortitude, not even watching a single presentation to see why I was upset, just the fact that I was upset. And that's 5 years ago. Imagine how much more sophisticated they got since then. My own family. And so I've been ostracized, which makes it okay because now I work on nuclear 24 hours a day. I research 24 hours a day. I go out and do field research. I was doing studies today, field research on whales. And so I go along the coastlines, and anybody who lives on the coastline, I'll ask them if they've seen any whales today or this week. Anybody that's visiting, that's out there looking on the shorelines and beaches, I'll ask them if they've seen any birds or whales today. And I'm looking obviously like I'm dragging a drone around with me, but I can't launch it because there's nothing out there. It's let me just talk about the boat for a second. Ideally, the boat is in the water, right? So I was talking to a friend of mine today. I went and visited him to ask him why is my starting motor the cog that comes up from the starting motor engages the flywheel. Why isn't that dropping back down? Now it's rebuilt. I brought it back along with the resistor, made sure they're both working. The resistor, regulator resistor diodes is fine, so I reinstalled that. The starting motor though is getting stuck, and so he figures if I changes the Bendix to a smaller Bendix, then that'll free up the room there, and then because the motor will turn over, but because it's it's supposed to be loose, that little cog that engages the flywheel, and then it starts up in the flywheel. Now the motor flying, because it starts up, will drop, and I've heard that from both sources. The people that rebuild it, they checked it for me just to make sure, because mistakes can happen, have happened, or I could have made a mistake and broke it. Who knows? But it was working perfectly. I worked like a dog the weekend trying to make that work. I worked like in 75-degree temperatures in a spot where it was almost probably 90 for 4.5 hours straight. I was soaking wet with sweat. I took it off, put it back on. Like those starting motors, they have guides for the two major bolts. There's two major bolts, and there's a clamp at the bottom, right? But the two major bolts, you're going to get a perfect seal. A seat is designed specifically for that because it's got to go up, touch the flywheel and drop back down. I don't know. So he thinks if I change the Bendix sizes, I can resolve that. Because when you grab, it'll turn over anyway, but you can turn it by hand. The motor's perfect. But I got that problem now after getting it rebuilt. Well, that was the problem too before, right? Because we screwed up. Whatever, let's keep going here. So all-time high radiation levels of Fukushima plant, 40 meters from the Pacific is where they had one well. They were testing 1.1 billion atoms per cubic meter of strontium-90, which is so you can't just have strontium-90, but that's how much of strontium, 1.1 billion atoms for a ton, for 1,000 liters. Feared highly contaminated waters leaking into the ground. So, like, the word leaking and a nuclear meltdown don't belong. The word leaking should never be anywhere in that conversation when you have nuclear meltdowns. Because let me explain that to you. Where would you point to tell me there could be a leak if you were an engineer? Where would you point to? Where, like, would you call that destroyed or would you call it a leak? It's offensive to call that a leak, to call this a leak, right? And this was Stanford University's radioactive fallout based upon 19.5 days, 468 hours. Is 19.5 days. We got so many models. It's pretty rare for me to make a mistake because I'm vigilant. I'm very conscious of how a mistake would be weaponized against me. And so even a Freudian slip is a nightmare for me. But how do you not make mistakes on a complicated subject like this, despite the fact that we're approaching at least 4,000 presentations? And back in the early years, I'd done a total of around 600 radio interviews. And now we have amazing 14 people on my show. Fourteen people with a conscience There's probably 400 or 500 people watching. Twice as much contaminated water enters the ocean from Fukushima as officials claim. The Japanese government's 600 tons of groundwater enters the ocean each day at the plant. New York Times TEPCO figures assumes all water entering the ocean from the plant is contaminated. 2013. Let's use that screen, because that way, if you want to, you can always stop this and read that kind of stuff, right? That's very important, because this is an educational program. A total of about 54,000 tons of treated water. That's the story from today. So suggesting, and that's why I'm showing you all of this stuff, Japan Times, discharges of Fukushima material, nuclear material, into the Pacific Ocean this is Japan Times, one of the biggest medias in Japan, have effectively contaminated the sea. Move ahead to 2023, August the 24th, and Japan Times says Fukushima about to start discharging into the Pacific Ocean, and refusing to acknowledge that they've covered the emissions for a decade. Because United Nations, which is why we have that particular poll tonight, to help highlight these criminal and crimes against humanity acts by this parasitic, human-hating, species-hating entity known as UN, which is a corporation like McDonald's. It has no sovereignty over any country. It's the disgusting, despicable, and degenerate United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency cover-up of Fukushima's nuclear meltdowns, criminal, and crimes against humanity. It's not a crime to poison you with radiation. Congress and Parliament don't have the authority to make it criminal. Only the non-regulatory commission, Nuclear Regulatory Commission, has that authority. And that's absurd. That's absurdness to suggest that the government doesn't, the politicians don't have the authority. They have the authority to make thousands of chemicals illegal to use to poison you, but not nuclear. If it's illegal, then they can't kill you in the hospital. They can't kill your children and your friends and your families and your loved ones in every hospital in North America. Radiation therapy is a genocide. It's not therapy. It's called a therapy, which, again, this is typical of the nuclear industry, right? It's got a very long, colorful history of crimes against humanity with radiation all the way back to Marie Curie, right? Radium suppositories, radium lipstick, radium toothpaste, radium soap, radium oils for your furniture, for your cars, for your carpets, radium deodorants. This is why I wouldn't buy an antique. I wouldn't touch it unless I got a real good Geiger counter to check it with. Because they were selling this stuff like crazy. They were making radium bottles, and you would put radium jugs, fired like pottery jugs, and so you can order that in, and it would show up, and you fill it up with water, and when the water was really irradiated, then you would drink it. And eventually, all of these, like radium lipstick, radium suppositories, strap your mind around that statement, radium soap, they had to stop all of them eventually, and because they were killing so many people started suing the companies. So all of these entities went out of business because they were genocides. And the industry just won't give it up. That's its favorite thing to do with radiation, is to kill humans and animals. And now the ultimate is the fuel pools are killing everything on the planet. The emissions from the fuel pools. Radioactive iodine 7.5 million times legal limit in waters around Fukushima. So did anything get out before August the 24th, 2023? Everything got it. This is 2011 story, by the way. U.S. West Coast be hit hard by Fukushima ocean contamination. So all the documentation that this has happened exists, but now the new story is nothing happened at Fukushima and there's a nuclear renaissance. Radiation Fukushima groundwater skyrocketed 3,500 times over the weekend, 5 meters from the Pacific Ocean, and nothing can be done, let alone is being done, to stop it flowing into the Pacific. 2013, December the 17th. The releases skyrocketed 3,500%. Probably had an earthquake and another criticality of one of the melted reactor buildings or the common spent fuel pool. And so every one of these stories that you're seeing tonight, when you see this, underneath it would be 6, 7, 8, 9 paragraphs. Each paragraph came from either TEPCO or the press or the media worldwide. And so the headlines was the consensus of all those stories. In the history of science, we've never seen anything like the Fukushima plume headed across the Pacific to the United States and Canada. Why is Japan allowed to get away with contaminating the ocean? 2013, flash ahead to 2025, and there's no contamination. So everything I showed you tonight officially is a lie, but everything I showed you tonight is what they told you originally for the first decade. Well, not whole decade, but the lies, the truth slowly slipped away. This is the French government's study of a spike of cesium-137 at 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air of cesium-137, which pulses energy 600 feet every second for 300 years, covering the entire planet. Does anybody really think this went away? So this wiped out the insects, 95% of the insects, the birds, the animals, the biota in the forest, the ecosystem in the forest. Everything in the meadows and the forest is getting full body X-rays. But this can't travel by itself. It's going to be, if you got one isotope in that capacity, then you have all the other isotopes in the same plume. They all travel at the same time. They're all the same size. So this is a story from today. They begin second round of releases, but this is day 23, 14 years ago. The whole planet buried. Fukushima looks to local initiatives to combat population decline. That's today's headline, Japan Times. Fukushima. You know, Fukushima? Rain with 20 million particles, which is even worse, of radioactive iodine-131 per liter fell on the United States during post-Fukushima peak. Per liter. So in that same sample, there was 10 times more iodine-132. And in that same sample was 30 times more iodine-133. And in that same sample was 31 times more iodine-120, not sample, but that's, yes, well, sampled in that liter of water. There would have been 31 times more, which was 220 million atoms per liter, which is confirmed in a separate study from Ottawa, Canada. It's almost undetectable. And a half-life of 15 million years, 15.7 million years. So it'll be around for 157 million years because there's 10 half-lives. As it concentrates, like, because you're talking about 220 million atoms per liter. So that is a concentration, see? That's a concentration that there's nothing on the planet replicating cells has an autoimmune trigger to defend against. Due to its long half-life and continued release from ongoing nuclear energy production, so all nuclear sites are releasing the iodine-129. They're producing it perpetually, forever, the fuel is. So the fuel and the fuel pools are all splitting atoms. This is one of the byproducts. And it's catastrophic to everything with replicating cells. So why ain't we gone to war against this industry? Because clearly this industry has gone to war against humanity and the 8 million species that it is now compromised, period. Dead sea lines everywhere. CBS Los Angeles, March the 30th. Now, notice how back then they never talk about avian influenza. They don't talk about domoic acid or anything like this. They talk about mysterious mass species die off of every species. I've never seen anything like it, says the rescuer. We never would have imagined the numbers. Expert quotes, no oceanographic explanation for what we're seeing. Right. There's nothing ocean-wise that could happen naturally that could cause this to happen to all these species. But the only thing we all have in common for all of this stuff, and so the headlines, CBS Los Angeles, starving, dying sea lions washing up. So these animals were all emaciated. Dead sea lions everywhere was because they were starving. They were emaciated. And I have a huge folder just on sea lions, emaciated sea lions. Federal government declares rare unusual mortality event in California. 70% of all newborn sea lions may be dying. Testing for toxins, infectious agents, all came clear. KPBS, so there's typically below it would be 6, 7, 8, 9 medias, and they would put a paragraph and then the link to each of the stories. Manatees dying in droves on both coasts of Florida, deaths of pelicans, turtles, dolphins increasing. Scientists fear this is the beginning of a devastating ecosystem collapse 2 years after Fukushima. And of course, we've covered so many of these heartbreaks over the years. And we've done the research expeditions for 6 years straight, for 4 to 5 months a year on the Pacific Ocean, from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. Shellfish gone near damaged nuke plant, likely extinct because of the Fukushima nuclear crisis. No, Dana's like a banana and a potato chip and walking in the sunshine and flying on an airplane and climbing a mountain and sleeping next to somebody. Crisis of epic proportions for the California sea lions, suffering abscesses, seizures, severe emaciation. Right, their immune system is compromised by the radiation, so they're more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless, right? Fukushima fallout spiked a year after 3/11. Let me go back to that one. Spiked a year after Fukushima, after 2011. Japan doctor so enraged by the response of the governments that the Fukushima children's rashes, nosebleeds, diarrhea, and fatigue are blamed on radiation phobia mothers. New York Times, alarming reality of Fukushima Daiichi, plant faced with new crisis, TEPCO is clearly hanging on day by day. Title of that story at the New York Times was Radioactive Water Imperils the Fukushima Plant. This was Martin Frackler from the New York Times Tokyo Bureau. We got a little clip of him, actually. Let me dig that up. I think I know where to find that. I shouldn't say anything without, because I got so much now. There you go, Martin Frackler, New York Times. This was like he's. What did he do? Cover it up? I might have to adjust the volume. I apologize. I'm going to turn it down, so I might start it again.
My name is Martin Fackler. I am the Tokyo Bureau Chief. My name is Martin Fackler. I am the Tokyo Bureau Chief. And the title, as we just heard, was Challenges and Opportunities After the Fukushima Nuclear Disaster, this crisis management. And the question of what do you tell your public? You know, I mean, do you tell them that there's a serious nuclear accident, or do you play it down? Do you try to cover it up?
What do you tell the public? What are we, like garbage or something? You tell us the truth. Why would you even suggest for 1 second, do you play it down, do you cover up? Why would you suggest, oh, because you're a journalist. Can you imagine how evil you got to be a journalist? What's the point of being a journalist when your job is to be evil? Like when someone tells you journalist, and your assumption is you can't trust them, and you need to get away from them immediately because you have terrible intentions. That's the only reason they're in your proximity. What the hell, that's just heartbreaking that you have to think that way, isn't it? But that's, if you're smart, I would have welcomed a journalist 10 years ago. Now I vehemently tell them to take a hike. A vast area, 60 million people contaminated from Fukushima disaster. Study, that's a study. But according to the International Atomic Energy Agency on October the 24th, or August 24th, 2023, none of this stuff I'm showing you has ever happened. As United Nations, International Atomic Energy Agencies cover up with the Fukushima nuclear meltdown, criminal and crimes against humanity, an insidiously coward thing to do. 13 viewers, 20 likes, 18 votes. 13 viewers. 13. Because they can censor me, so why not? So at least when I'm starting to do lectures and presentations now, I'll always have more people in real life in front of me than I would have these wonderful souls on YouTube statistically, right? I'm sure there's a lot more people watching the show. It seems impossible that I can only, someone like, first off, I like to think, I've a very informative program, that I also have a good sense of humor. If you know a bit about nuclear, how can you not say that I have a sense of humor? You might not agree with it. You can't deny it, though. It's good humor. And I was too lazy to fix the Geiger counter, to go, because my studio is pretty crowded. Like my immediate setup is a nightmare. There's so much. It takes so much to pull off these shows. And then in order for the Geiger counter to work, you got a Geiger counter, you need a light and a camera to make that work. So there's no room for anything. Fukushima plant hemorrhaging for 2 years. Japan times, groundwater is reaching the sea. Growing alarm, problems mounting. Officially, if you have solutions, we'd like to know. Wall Street Journal, no immediate health threats. New York Times, Japan nuclear plant may have been leaking for 2 years. May have been leaking. It's like every time I hear the word leaking, I think every time that we can find it in the media that someone said the word leaking, those people should get the rest of their life in jail. Do these buildings look like they leaked, or that they lost their entire inventories? Because radiation matters. Because nothing on the planet has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it. See the building behind me, do you think that was leaking? Or do you think it was a catastrophic event? That's reactor 4. Officially, reactor 4 never melted down. And all the media, this is just a fraction of them, all the media came out and made that assertion. So all the media to the right are going to pretend they're at the building to your left.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
So how many people thinks that should be a crime to do what they're doing? Anybody? Just for posterity's sake. Is United Nations National Atomic Energy Agency, the watchdogs, they covered up What happened to Fukushima? Right, there was nobody came out and objected to that. The only person that was questioned, there was one person, there was one alternative radio show that got Helen Caldicott on and asked Helen Cott, does it look like this or does it look like that? And Helen Caldicott is probably the most famous anti-nuclear activist on the entire planet. And let me play that video. Now, she's done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews where she made the same assertion. This video, she was asked. She was asked, did it look like this or does it look like that? That's the two pictures I put there. The top center square box is the interview. And so he'll have pictures of that also. And he'll ask her, and she'll say, the Japanese are very, very, well, let's let her say it. I'll get my big fat head out of the way.
Let me ask you this. You've said that if the spent fuel pool in number 4 collapses, that you would evacuate your family from Boston. Do you think we would ever know the truth of what's going on there? And the reason I ask is because we've seen coverage in the national news media here in the United States from ABC News and others that take video cameras in saying that they're being given exclusive access to number 4 in the removal of the fuel rods, which is said to have begun. And what we see in the video being shared here in America is a pristine interior building. It doesn't look like a building in which the top blew off in a hydrogen explosion.
The Japanese are very tidy people, and they have, by robot control and by human beings, removed the debris from the top of Building 4, and it does look pristine.
So is Helen Caldicott right? It looks really good. Bi-robots, they had robots and bi-robots, but a bi-robot is a human. So why didn't she say they had humans? Why would she say they had bi-robots? Like two-legged robots. Because that's what she was telling that audience, right? This was a pretty big show back in those days. Fukushima plant is hemorrhaging radioactivity. The scariest part of it all is they don't know where it's coming from. 2013. And the big mystery is why contamination is coming out now in such a hurry, 2 years later. It's called, they had an earthquake and they had a recriticality at some of the nuclear material that was left there, I guess. Fears or reactor, the common spin fuel pool. Fears marine life is being poisoned by nuclear material flown from the Fukushima. Experts warn of a festering radioactive source contaminating the food chain. Well, it's boiling somewhere inside of reactor 3. Reactor's supposed to be in cold shutdown. Really? Well, that's reactor 3 to your left. But here's an updated picture to your left. There is no reactor 3. The reactor and the fuel pool were at the very top of these 190-foot buildings. So they were like 150 feet off the ground. And the other side of that building right, what's left of reactor 3 to your left, is destroyed all the way to the ground. Like this here. Like when you look at this part here, can you imagine that it's reasonable on the inside anywhere else in the building? Well, the stump of the building. I don't know why this world is not fighting back, but I'm going to be here for you. I'm here to help you. I'm here to help educate you. I'm here to remind you that you're not going to escape this. Nobody's getting away from this. If all the whales are emaciated, imagine what's going to happen to us in the near future. Fukushima, And this story was from today. As the number of children continue to fall, really, in a nuclear wasteland, the goal is to share a sense of crisis. So you want people to move back into the nuclear wasteland so you can have population explosion there. You disgusting parasites. The goal is to share a sense of crisis between the public and private sectors and mitigate the outflow of young people, especially women. Really, the women want to get out of a nuclear wasteland. Oh, the crimes, which has been a major factor behind the population decline and the falling birth rate. Really, so you're not saying being in a nuclear wasteland doesn't have an adverse side effect. You're saying it's because women are migrating out. I disagree with that. I'm sure they're moving out. This is a hospital. Fukushima, radiation may be eating holes in people's brains. That's the hospital. Right? Because it's not like a banana or a potato chip or walking in sunshine. Report, military was brought in to hide the true radiation levels. The military. You know, your stoic heroes. Not all people in the military are bad, don't get me wrong. But you're not allowed to disobey an order for the most part. So even though you're not a bad person, you might have to be a bad person because you can go to jail if you're not a bad person. If you're in the military. Experts, official covering up the dire consequences of the crisis, worry over high numbers of cancers being detected. It was roughly 35.7% out of a million, which is 357,000 out of a million with thyroid tumors for children in the first year by 2012. It used to be 1 in a million pre-Fukushima. Public is suffering radioactive related diseases. So before Fukushima, they were called tumors. After Fukushima, they were like, oh, they're benign. They're tumors, but they're 2 centimeters, which is almost the size of the thyroid gland of a child. Astronomical amount of radiation found in downtown Tokyo, directly outside a government building. Horrific reading where kids are playing in Fukushima. Extreme levels found where food is grown for elementary school lunches. Nuclear expert was shocked and upset by discovery. Fukushima, extreme levels found where food is grown for elementary school lunches. Did they stop growing the food? No. Did they move the children out of the area? No. What does that tell us about these people? What does it tell us about the nuclear industry? Do you find that concerning? Are you ashamed that people like that exist? Should you be ashamed that people like that exist? Could you or would you be ashamed that people like that actually exist? What was I looking for? Oh yeah, hang on. It's mad. The story's madness, but the cruelty of this industry is even crazier madness. I forgot what I was doing there. See, because I've been at it for so long, I have some folders like that I consider important folders. And when I go to those folders, there's so much stuff there. I get mesmerized. It's like I'm hypnotized, right? I'll just show you one example that defies responsibility. That defies, well, bear with me, I got it right here now coming up. That's backwards. What's going on there? It's hard to reconcile how disconnected from responsibility the nuclear industry really is. I think that I'm almost. I just don't recognize this folder. I don't know what's going on here. Was that the search? Oh, that must be the search. Hang on. Yeah, I got sidetracked. Here we go. We'll be okay. Everything is good. We're almost there. I bet you can't guess what I'm doing. Here we go. Jacques Cousteau. All right. Actually, a moment, please. This is probably the strangest story you're ever going to see. 2013, November the 4th, 2.5 years later. Elementary school in Japan is using water bottles to shield the students from radiation. So they're taking water bottles, the children are bringing empty bottles, and then they fill them up with water, and they have boxes on the inside of the classrooms. And they put the water bottles there to shield the students from the radiation that they say is outside. And this is in Koriyama City, where every building is entitled to be decontaminated by the homeless people that work for the government, but they haven't got enough homeless because they keep disappearing at Fukushima, right? / dying. An elementary school in Koriyama City, which is located at the Fukushima Prefecture, 34 miles west towards South Korea, of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Is using water bottles to shield the radiation outside the building coming from the courtyard. But that whole prefecture is surrounded by millions of one-ton bags of radioactive foliate that they picked up. And every building is entitled to be decontaminated because it's radioactive. So they're refusing to acknowledge any radiation is inside, but that is so bad outdoors, the water bottles are used to shield the radiation coming from the courtyard and other areas outside the school building, but which is they're refusing to acknowledge is in the building. And it doesn't matter because you still shouldn't be in that part of the country, see? You should be evacuating the students, not filling bottles up with water is basically what I'm trying to tell you. The bottles are filled with water and placed inside the square boxes, which are stacked around the classrooms, inside, outside. And apparently it's a little bit effective, not too bad. According to the school, it seems to reduce the radiation inside by 1/3. You're in a nuclear wasteland where they picked up 30 million one-ton bags and you want to evacuate the kids. And then your solution, and this is clearly being encouraged by the media because they're telling the story, if you got high radiation in the classrooms, then stack water bottles outside. But don't criticize the nuclear industry. So this is not an industry that this planet needs or wants or has a right. It doesn't have a right to exist. If we had charters, everybody in the nuclear industry would be in jail right now instead of corporate personhood where there's no accountability. It's using water bottles to shield radiation coming from the courtyards. And what happens if nobody fights for humanity? What happens if we don't exist? What happens if 13 people who care about the planet don't exist? And imagine how evil you got to be to censor me so I only got 12 or 13 people in my shop. Imagine how evil you actually got to be to do that, to get that job. Imagine what kind of worthless human you actually got to be to even be offered that particular job. Imagine how sinister you got to be a teacher and keep the students and still go to class every day in a nuclear wasteland. Imagine how stupid you actually are as a teacher, that rather than get the frig editor, you stay there and you keep the children in a nuclear wasteland, and you justify it by saying that you're powerless. You're not powerless, you pack up and you leave, which is any normal, rational human with half a conscience would have done, because they're living in a nuclear wasteland. Their body's saturated with white blood cells, displacing the oxygen. The red blood cells carrying oxygen nutrition. Is using water bottles to shield radiation coming from the courtyards and other areas around the school building. The bottles are filled with water and placed inside of square boxes, which are stacked around the classroom. Residents of Koriyama City have been concerned about the high amount of radioactive materials which have been found around their town. You're concerned. See, your media is truly your worst enemy. It's the opposite of media. It's your enemy. Residents of Koriyama City, which is a nuclear wasteland. Koriyama City, this was a study, the United Nations Scientific Committee, unclear on the effects of atomic radiation. Absorbed radiation doses in red bone marrow in Japan for the first year. They completely misrepresented it. They only looked at cesium-137 because no other isotopes exist according to United Nations even today. And they got the names of the communities. You got the next row is population. Next row is physical atoms per square meter of ground. And we're only going to acknowledge cesium-137. Fukushima City, 300,000 people at 230,000 atoms per square meter of cesium-137, which pulses energy 600 feet. So if every square meter is pulsing energy 600 feet, is that not a nuclear wasteland? If every atom, so every square feet, there's 230,000 pulses of energy, almost at the speed of light every second for 300 years. If that doesn't meet the qualifications of a nuclear wasteland, and then they refuse to say there's external plume, external inhalation, they refuse to acknowledge any meaningful statistical, factual documentation. Average disposition density of cesium-137. What about the uranium, the plutonium, the americium, the neptunium, the strontiums, all the other isotopes? What a retarded, disgusting, parasitic industry is this? This is an industry of no friends of humanity, no friends of birds. They're no friends to the animals, the whales, the insects, to the bacteria, to the fungus, to the biota. They're no friends of the phytoplankton. They're no friends of you and your loved ones, your hopes, your dreams. They're the epitome, the enemy of humanity and the 8 million species. That's who these people are. That's who the pro-nuclear community. They're your mortal enemies. You better wake up and you better smell the corpses. Koriyama City has 341,000 people and 162 counts per minute of cesium-137 per square meter, pulsing energy 600 feet. So every square meter is overlapping pulsing energy. The problem is not just gamma. So the alphas, the neutrons, the betas, and they're all going to pulse energy. They're all going to be similar numbers, much higher, because we're only talking about cesium-137, a single emitter. The biggest byproduct of these irradiated fuel rods is not cesium-137, by the way. It's curium isotopes. And curium, like 244, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium, which, by the way, is named after the devil because of its insidious and monstrous and hideous attributes. Okay, back to this story. Elementary school in Japan is using water bottles to shield students from radiation. You can't shield students from radiation in a nuclear wasteland, and you couldn't do it with bottles, and it ain't just your school. And so therefore, these teachers, these mayors, these authorities in these communities, these government employees, these parents, are idiots and monsters to leave the most vulnerable and the future of humanity in a nuclear wasteland that is, it's incontestable, it's unassailable. What we're talking about is a nuclear wasteland. This is not up for debate. This is not hard to comprehend either, because I've laid everything out for you methodically, and we'll continue to do it. I'm here forever, and I'll be here long after I'm gone, because I produced absurd amount of material that is never going to go away. They can take down my sites, but my material is never going to go away. Residents of Koriyama City have been concerned about the high amounts of radioactive material found around their towns. And while school lunches are tested for cesium, one of the 1,000 isotopes you're worried about, parents are concerned because they are largely unable to find out where the food was originally produced. They called it items. They didn't even call it, and they called it lunches. They wouldn't even call it food. Instead of calling it food, they called it items. Because that's what a journalist's job is. The journalist's job is to stab you and your loved ones to death by a million radiation pulses and go home and enjoy their nuclear wasteland with their loved ones, because they're just as stupid as the industry that supports them. Because Koriyama City is outside the nuclear wasteland zone, the official evacuation zone. It's a nuclear wasteland, rather. The government has barely conducted any decontamination activities. You can't decontaminate a community. It's not like an oil spill. It's not like a thunderstorm or a hailstorm or something. This radiates everything. Every branch, every blade of grass, every piece of pollen, everything in that ecosystem is incredibly radioactive. And always will be now for millions and millions and millions of years. And to leave the kids there and to take it to a level of stupid, because when you look at all the surrounding communities, everything's a nuclear wasteland, abandoned by the industry. And then the communities are so complacent, so incapable of comprehending the enormity of the contamination, and not even being able to appreciate the reality of the contamination, live in a fictional world where they're only acknowledging stuff outdoors, refusing to acknowledge the interior is contaminated. And all the academics refuse to inform them, refuse to speak out, refuse to educate the teachers and the communities. This is not a broken system. This is evil. This is just evil. This is evil on a level that even evil never dreamt of. It's unconscionable. And so we're going to have a nuclear renaissance that has already have a legacy of just nothing but contempt. What do you think is going to happen to humanity? I got so much material there, there's no way we're going to get it all in the night. I had a bad cramp in my stomach tonight, so it's hard for me to sit up. But I wanted to get the show out there, because if not, then the nuclear industry won today. And the industry winning today is not an option that I want to participate in. And so we got a show out. In your face, nuclear. So I'm going to have to pull the starter off the boat. There's no reason that should be binding up. The motor turns over, like it's not off. The flywheel is not like, has never moved. It has to be the Bendix drive of the motor, because it's getting stuck in the flywheel, right? And it should be really loose, and then it would just retract back down. It's working perfectly. I watched them. I brought it back and they checked it. Same as the regulator resistor dial. I brought that back and they checked it and they showed me, no, Dana, that's working. And they told me they're concerned, right, that I can't get it to work. They said, well, come back and see us if you can't get it to work. Dana, we're here to try to help you get through this because, listen, start motors, like for me to take start motors and put them on, it's a joke for me. But I've done it like for 4.5 hours. And only time with 2 bolts. And I still couldn't. So there's something else going on, right? I just, it's not like, it's an awkward place to do it, but it's not hard, is what I'm saying, right? If you're just patient, you'll get it off and you'll go through everything, you'll get it back on. Yeah, that's right, Colette. And they feed the children radioactive food, radioactive water, and radioactive air in the nuclear wasteland, and they send them to a radioactive nuclear school where they have to stack the classroom. What kind of society does that? That's a society that has been compromised and infested by a plague known as the nuclear industry, by a parasite. The only parasite on this planet, the most deadly parasite on this planet is nuclear academics and pro-nuclear communities. They're the parasites. And they act like humans, look like humans, but they don't have any of the real attributes. They're just completely disconnected from being responsible stewards of this planet. They have they just have nothing but contempt. It's not about profit, it's about they have no contempt. The contempt they have, they have nothing but contempt. And they have an abundance of contempt for me and you and the species. Sweet! James got another song out there. I think it's a song. It looks like it could be a song. I don't care what it is. Now he done a little series of videos. I'll show them to you in a second. That you might want to pay attention to. You should download them and keep them. I'll show you here coming up. You go over James's site. Bless his heart. He produced, just like nuclear, containment strategy call intermission, and end of field integrity extended intermissions. These are actually really important, those 3 videos. So we got a brand new song tonight. And that song last night was awesome, eh? And so was this one over here, by the way. So Beak Z Bazooka. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a link in the bottom of it. I'm not there. Hang on. I'm going to stop the video and adjust the volume for you in real time. I just want to check under the video to see if he's got a link, because he does that a lot too. Well, he's linked over to World Nuclear News. So this is what his, okay. So his song is about this story. The World Nuclear News, by the way, is a lobbying group. And so if you're looking for something to inspire you as an anti-nuclear, go over to that site. That site is full of propaganda. And so every time I go to that site, I get upset. And apparently James does too. So his story is about this warning after gunfire near Zaporižžje nuclear disease factory. The disgusting International Atomic Energy Agency, who I got a poll tonight asking, is United Nations International Atomic Energy Agency's cover-up of the Fukushima nuclear meltdowns criminal and crimes against humanity? And we have some momentum right now. And so now's a good time for people, particularly who've never donated, to donate. And use my PayPal to Dana Durnford. You'll see it in the description down below. And we need to raise money. We're going to go start doing presentations at universities and major places, and we're going to push back. We are going to bring the fight to the nuclear industry, and we are going to win this fight. Because our narrative is rock solid. Theirs is like a sheave for straining rice in that. It's full of holes, and we're going to expose that, and eventually thousands of people. Oh, what's this? Only 360. So usually we get 1080. It's a good thing I checked. Hugs for everybody. I'm going to restart that. And I'm going to adjust the volume for you. So I'll put a link in the description after to this song. And so if the volume gets a bit funny, it's me. I'm listening to my headphones. I'm trying to adjust it through my machine. Whereas if you're listening to the song, his audio will be better than my audio that's coming through the whole system. So if you like the song, go back, make sure you go listen to it and subscribe at his site. Hugs. Take care, everybody. We'll see everybody on the show tomorrow night. Take care.
bazooka, half-life him. The warhead was a filing cabinet. Your mask got melted on impact, and all your safety briefings drowned in steam. If it's lost, you're not recoverable. If it's lost, you're not recoverable.